Every purchase you've ever made tells a story, not about what you bought, about who you are. The thing that you impulse bought at 2 in the morning but still haven't opened. The subscription you forgot about but never canceled. The expensive thing you bought to feel better after a bad week. None of that was really about the product. It was about something else entirely. Today we're going to decode what your spending habits actually reveal about your psychology. And by the end of this video, you're going to recognize yourself in ways that might make you slightly uncomfortable. Let's get into it. Here's something psychologists have known for decades that nobody really talks about openly. We almost never buy things for the reasons we think we do. You think you bought that expensive watch because it was good quality, but you bought it because you wanted to feel successful. You think you ordered that food delivery because you were too tired to cook, but you ordered it because you needed comfort. You think you bought those new shoes because your old ones were worn out, but you bought them because you'd had a terrible week and needed something to look forward to. Every purchase is a decision, and every decision reveals a need. Not a need for the product, a deeper psychological need that the product was asked to fill. The question is, which need is yours? Type 1. The status spender. The first type of spender is the most visible and the most misunderstood. The status spender buys things to be seen, not because they're shallow, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that what they own determines how people treat them. And that lesson, once learned, is very hard to unlearn. You'll recognize a status spender by this pattern. They always buy the visible version of things. The branded bag they carry publicly. The car that gets noticed. The restaurant they post before they eat. But the headphones they use alone at home? Basic. The mattress they sleep on. Never thought about it. The things nobody sees. Those they don't care about. The psychology behind this is actually quite sad when you look closely. Status spending is almost always rooted in one of two things: either a childhood where they felt invisible or unworthy, or a social environment where they feel constantly compared and judged. The expensive thing becomes armor. The question to ask yourself if you relate to this: what are you protecting yourself from? Type 2. The comfort spender. The comfort spender doesn't buy things to show off. They buy things to feel okay. They're the ones who shop when they're stressed, who order food delivery not because they're hungry, but because they're sad, who buy something small, a book, a candle, a new plant, on days when everything feels heavy. This isn't weakness, this is a coping mechanism. And like most coping mechanisms, it works, briefly. The dopamine hit is real, the comfort is real, but it lasts maybe 20 minutes. And then the original feeling comes back, sometimes with guilt added on top. Comfort spenders typically grew up in environments where emotions weren't easily expressed or processed, so they learned to soothe themselves with objects and experiences instead. The pattern to watch for, if the urge to buy spikes exactly when you're stressed, anxious, lonely, or overwhelmed, that's not a shopping habit. That's an emotional management strategy, wearing a shopping habit as a disguise. Type 3. The control spender. This one is less talked about but extremely common. The control spender uses money and purchases as a way to feel in control of their life. They research obsessively before buying anything. They make spreadsheets. They compare 47 options before choosing one. They feel genuine anxiety if they make a purchase they didn't plan. On the surface, this looks like financial responsibility, and sometimes it is. But for the control spender, it's actually about something deeper. Life feels uncertain and unpredictable. But this purchase decision, this they can control. This they can research fully, optimize completely, and get right. It's not about the product. It's about the feeling of having made the perfect decision in a world that rarely gives you that. Control spenders often appear in careers and environments with high uncertainty. Startups, creative fields, jobs with unpredictable outcomes. The more out of control they feel professionally or personally, the more rigid their spending decisions become. The irony, all that research and optimization often leads to worse outcomes than just deciding quickly. Because they're not actually optimizing for the product, they're optimizing for the feeling of control. Type 4. The experience chaser. The experience chaser doesn't really care about things. They'll wear the same 3 outfits for months without thinking about it. Their home is fine, functional, unremarkable. They barely notice it. But experiences, travel, concerts, dinners, events, adventures, they spend freely and without guilt. On the surface, this looks like enlightened spending, and there's genuine psychology backing it. Experiences do produce more lasting happiness than objects for most people. But the experience chaser often has a shadow side. They're frequently running from something. The constant movement, the next trip, the next event, is not just about joy. It's about never being still long enough to sit with the things they'd have to face if they stopped. The purchases are wonderful. The life looks enviable from the outside. But there's a restlessness underneath that the experiences temporarily soothe but never solve. The question for the experience chaser isn't whether their spending is right or wrong. It's, what would you feel if you stayed in one place, completely still, for 30 days? Type 5, the guilt spender. The guilt spender is perhaps the most quietly painful type. They spend money on others, generously, constantly, sometimes to their own detriment, because spending on themselves creates an almost physical sense of guilt. They'll buy expensive gifts for friends and family without hesitation. They'll pick up every bill. They'll donate, contribute, give. But a nice thing for themselves, a holiday just for them, something purely self-indulgent with no practical justification, almost impossible. The psychology here is often rooted in a feeling of unworthiness. Somewhere they absorb the belief, usually in childhood, that they don't deserve good things. That spending on yourself is selfish, that your needs come last. So they convert all their spending into spending for others, which feels safe, justified, and virtuous. The cost, they often end up depleted. Financially, emotionally, both. Because you cannot pour from an empty cup, and then you cannot sustain generosity that's rooted in guilt rather than genuine abundance. Type 6, the hoarder buyer. The hoarder buyer buys things and then doesn't use them. The course they bought and never watched. The gym equipment in the corner. The books stacked unread. The app subscriptions running quietly in the background. The purchase feels like progress, like they've taken a step toward becoming the person they want to be. And then the thing arrives, or the subscription starts, and the actual work of becoming that person has to begin. Which is harder, and so they buy something else instead. This is called identity-based purchasing. You're not buying the product, you're buying a version of yourself. The fit person, the well-read person, the organized person, the one who speaks French. The purchase is the fantasy of becoming that person. The actual becoming, that's a different transaction entirely. One that costs not money, but time, discomfort, and consistency. The hoarder buyer's bank statement is a museum of who they wanted to be. The question is, which of those versions are you actually going to become? So here's the uncomfortable truth that sits underneath all of this. Your spending habits are not random. They're not just about money. They're a precise map of your psychological needs, your unresolved fears, your deepest self-image, and your most persistent coping strategies. The status spender is asking, do I matter? The comfort spender is asking, can I feel okay? The control spender is asking, can I make something certain? The experience chaser is asking, can I feel alive? The guilt spender is asking, am I allowed to exist for myself? The hoarder buyer is asking, can I become someone better? These are not spending questions. These are life questions. And the only way to change the spending pattern is to actually address the question underneath it. You probably recognize yourself in at least one of those. Maybe two. Maybe uncomfortably many. That recognition is the most valuable thing this video can give you. Not a tip, not a hack, not a budgeting strategy. Just the awareness that your money has been trying to tell you something about yourself this entire time. The question is, are you ready to listen? Tell me in the comments which type you are. I'm genuinely curious, and I promise, you're not alone in whichever one you pick. New video every week. Subscribe to Unlocked World so you don't miss it.